Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ben Van Houten. I'm the board president of the Nighttime Economy, Culture, and Policy Alliance, otherwise known as NITECAP. Our organization is a nonprofit network of professionals responsible for nighttime economy advocacy, planning, and management in U.S. cities. This is part of our NITECAP speaker series, our ongoing free series of webinars discussing critical topics in nighttime economy management. And past sessions have covered alcohol licensing, planning and development, and the role of collaboration in nighttime governance. And all of those sessions, like this one, are available on our YouTube channel. This is one of a number of free resources that NITECAP provides to empower practitioners and advocates with new insights to help their work moving forward, which also includes a variety of policy papers and blog posts about these issues. And to continue this work, we hope that you will become a member or stay a member of NITECAP. You can join at our website, and we want to thank all of our members for supporting these efforts. Today's session is a look back at the past year in nighttime economy management and a look ahead at what practitioners are anticipating in 2025 and beyond. While 2024 showed definite signs of improvement over 2023, many of the prior year's significant challenges continue to impact cities and their nighttime economies, including inflation, the cost of doing business, labor shortages, and the changes to downtowns in light of remote and hybrid work. All of those issues are in addition to the concerns long associated with life at night, from sound management to public safety. These challenges require cities that care about their night times to prioritize adaptation, creative thinking, collaboration, tenacity, and resilience moving forward. These are the values that drive nighttime focused work at its best. Across the country, city leaders have embodied these values, delivering important wins to support vibrant nighttime economies this year. And our panel of nighttime economy managers from around the United States will share insights about their city's recent successes and discuss the emerging trends facing nighttime work in the year to come. And with that, I will introduce all four of our panelists. We have Corean Reynolds, Director of Nightlife Economy from Boston; Julia Heath, Policy and Outreach Manager in the Mayor's Office of Nighttime Economy in New Orleans; Tina Lee-Vogt, Nighttime Economy Manager in Sacramento; and Brian Block, Entertainment Services Manager in Austin. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. We're going to go one at a time and talk about some recent successes and dig a little bit into the year as each of you have seen it, and then we are going to come together to talk about what we're looking at moving forward. I'm going to start with Tina. Hi, Tina.
Morning. Well, it's morning here. Good afternoon if you're someplace on the East Coast.
Very good. So Tina, in 2023, Sacramento released a couple of studies, right? A sociable city assessment and a Sacramento music census. And I'm curious at a high level what those studies told you about the nighttime economy needs in Sacramento.
Yeah, so both of those studies, although they were different and they focused on different things, there were really some real key takeaways that both studies had that we're pursuing. The first is really a need to streamline our processes in terms of entertainment events permitting. So what we have is, depending on whether or not you're in a private or public space, people had to go to different departments to get them. So that was something that we realized was a need to streamline that process and really working on making that easier for folks because it was really confusing and it was almost an obstacle for people to go able to move forward. The other thing was just the need for a new license type. So we have, especially for entertainment, just one general entertainment type. So whether or not you were a coffee shop that just wanted to have a live band or a nightclub with scantily clad ladies with bottle service, you kind of had to get the same permit. And so it was really a daunting process. And so one of the things we realized is we needed to look at our different licensing types to be able to make it easier for folks to be able to get entertainment in their venues, regardless of their size. And then finally, one of the things we really noted was that our sound ordinance was really outdated. It was so outdated, it was called a noise ordinance. So it treated everything that was loud as noise. So, and it's probably about a millennial. It's about almost 30 years old. So it's a really old ordinance. And so we realized that we really needed to update those. So there were a lot of great recommendations out of both studies, but those are really the three key ones that we took away that both studies hit on.
So you have these reports and you have some ideas of areas you need to focus on to address. You've heard from stakeholders about the needs in nighttime economy work. I know that it's it can be easy for a city to develop a study and say, hey, we did it. Great job. The mission accomplished. And how do you go about, and how have you gone about over the past year tackling these key issues in tangible ways? What's been the approach and some of the lessons learned from that approach?
That is really something that I'm really proud of, is that you're right. I mean, I've been in local government for a very long time. And one of the things that often happens is you do a study and then we go, yay, we did a study, and you put it on a shelf and no one looked at it again. So what's really great is that for both of these studies, we're implementing those recommendations. So for example, utilizing our collaborative approach, because that's really what Sacramento is known for. We always work with all of our different partners. So interdepartmentally, working with our business improvement districts, working with our businesses, we're really implementing those key strategies that we identified. So our office, my Office of Nighttime Economy, is working really closely with our Convention and Cultural Services Department, or CCS. And they're going to be actually taking the lead in managing a new entertainment services division. So it's going to take those two elements of our entertainment permit program and our special events program, in addition to our film services, and put them in a single unit. And what's going to happen with that is this new division can really work on leveraging those kind of synergy between those three operations. They're looking at putting together an online permitting and payment system, which will make it easier. It'll also make it easier to track the status of a permit as it goes through the process. So working really closely with them to get that going. So council adopted and approved the new division as part of our budget in July. And so we're looking with getting that transition kind of finalized earlier this year, because we're a government, it takes a little time, but we're really looking at moving that forward. We're also working with CCS on the limited entertainment permit. So we got the authority from council earlier this year. We're going to go back with actually getting the ordinance in place. And we really hope to have this new permit type kind of moving forward with the finalization of the transition from the permitting program to CCS, hoping to have that up and going early in 2025 so we can get folks permitted by spring and summer so they can start doing events. And then we've returned the services of a consultant to help with a sound study so we can really put together an effective sound ordinance, because we really want something that's really related to sound management, not just enforcement. So we want to work on something that we can manage sound so that it works both for our residents for quality of life, but also so that we're not having businesses having to go out of business because someone decides they don't like having a venue next to them, so they just generate frivolous complaints. So we're really hoping to put together a really good sound management plan for managing our sound. And again, it's really nice that we're moving forward. A great partnership with CCS and our office, as well as code enforcement, police, and fire, which are our regular folks that we work with, working with our business improvement districts. So moving all of this forward, we've had a really great opportunity. In fact, we had a really great meeting with our community, with our stakeholders, where our promoters had an event where they invited us to come and speak. So it was Engage Sacramento. And so it really shows how this collaborative effort is bringing everything forward.
That's great. And leveraging government collaboration feels like one of the takeaways in terms of, if you have couple big reports with a lot of ideas, needing to find those opportunities to leverage collaboration to move a variety of things forward at the same time. That's great.
And I think one of the things those studies did too is a lot of things in those studies wasn't new information to us, but what it did was it would confirm that we were on the right path. And it really helped us get buy-in from what, quite frankly, the council and executive team management, because we can tell people we need something until we're blue in the face. But sometimes having that outside source, a consultant, come in and say, yeah, you do need a new permit type, or yeah, your sound ordinance is ancient, really helps being able to move that needle forward.
And using the data of the experiences of businesses on the ground to respond with that to me is the best type of sort of permit reform or streamlining. Is, it's not just an academic, wouldn't this be great? It's, we know, we're hearing from businesses, we're hearing from venues, we see this opportunity, we want to have more music, more places. Do I have that right? That's sort of
that's it exactly, as well as hearing from best practices, because when you have someone that's worked with other cities saying this is a best practice that you should be following, helps as well.
Awesome. You've touched on it a little bit, but just very quickly, and again, we'll come back to 2025 as a group, but so what are the next steps for this moving these accomplishments forward and keeping the momentum in 25?
I mean, I think, completing that transition of getting the entertainment services division in place and working collaboratively with all the departments that are impacted to make that happen. We're, really hoping to get that done. Well, we will be getting that done because that's already almost done. And then the limited entertainment permit, getting that in place. So those are probably the two big things. The other thing that we're really looking forward to working on, and we can talk about a little later, is entertainment zones. So we're really excited because there is some recent state legislation that's allowing entertainment zones here in California. You've been able to enjoy that in San Francisco, and you've provided some great examples of how to do it right. And so we're really looking forward to expanding that in Sacramento. And what these zones will do is it's an opportunity for bars and restaurants because it enables them to sell open alcoholic beverages during our special events, because now they're kind of boxed out of those events. So we think this is a great opportunity for us to attract residents and workers and visitors to our downtown, but also in other areas we have commercial corridors where maybe we can expand some exposure as well. So we're really looking forward to getting that ball rolling on that. And then finally, it's really big for us, and we're hoping that people are getting registered. We're really looking forward to hosting the Sociable City Summit here in Sacramento. We're creating a great event working really closely with RHI. And then we have a team of folks that just want to make sure that everybody who comes here has a really and great time here in Sacramento.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tina. Turning to Brian. Brian, it feels like this was a big year for Austin in terms of more effectively working to protect nightlife and expand opportunities for live music venues and neighborhood through planning. And you were part of a webinar earlier this year where I think you touched on some of this, but some of these accomplishments hadn't been fully realized yet. Could you talk for folks who either weren't at that webinar, just to sort of set the stage for it? What's the backdrop in Austin that made these projects so important?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And the backdrop goes back, quite a long time. Thinking about planning for trying to implement things, and lots has happened. But yes, I think the last year has been a great year for getting things done. And let's talk about a couple of those. But first, I guess a little more backdrop. These first two premises are mine, but I think they apply to Austin, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I'm going to say them anyway. That nightlife culture makes cities great places where people want to live, and it enriches our lives. And it's the independent artists, promoters, and entrepreneurs that drive the nightlife culture in a city. I think that's true in Austin, that's recognized as a live music city. I think it's broadly understood and supported. We can debate the depth and commitment to that, and I think we should challenge ourselves, and we could have a whole session on that. But I do think live music is genuinely and authentically recognized as important in Austin. And it's also recognized that independent spaces are the most fragile and at risk. They don't have tons of capital or big investors. They're grassroots. They come from the community. They're driven by a sense of purpose, usually more than just profit. Their margins are thin. And so commercial affordability is a big challenge in Austin and growing cities like Austin. And it's the independent spaces that are most at risk of being displaced, either from the center to the periphery, or the smallest and most at risk of displacement overall. And so what can we do with planning policies and regulations to support all creative spaces and venues, but with a focus on, the smallest and most at risk? And I guess what I'll say before I kind of talk about three things related to planning is, again, preaching to the choir, it takes more than just one focus. It takes a multi-pronged focus. So grants and funding and cultural trust and regulations geared to support the industry, and proactive nightlife management and liaison and advocacy works. It takes all of them, but we're going to talk a little bit about a few planning successes. The three things I wanted to talk about here are our new performance venue land use, which is, I guess I'll list the three and then see if we have time for all of them. our new sound assessment requirement for residential and hotel development when it goes in near existing bars, clubs, and venues. And the newest thing, which is pretty cool, is a density bonus, an incentive for affordable creative space. Those are three things that I think, what you said earlier, Ben, we can talk about and promote concepts, but what are we getting done? And I think those are three things that got done in the last year. Pretty big ticket items.
And can you talk, I totally agree, and we'll see how time goes, but I think maybe starting with the sound assessments, because I know that sound frictions and sound conflict, I mean, I feel like as long as we've known each other, that's been a topic. And so in terms of getting movement on, well, first of all, maybe just briefly talk about what the sound assessment policy is, and then how you were able to manifest it, how the city was able to get it done this year.
Yeah, it's been in the works to get this done, honestly, for more than 20 years, but in a real dedicated way over the past 7 years. And I think Tina talked about having a proactive approach to sound management. We're fortunate to have that in Austin. So it's predictable and it's fair and it's really built for managing and balancing entertainment related sound with residential and quality of life and livability. And I think it does a great job. But we wanted to go beyond that and look at proactively addressing quality of life and solving conflicts before they become a conflict. So our bars and clubs and venues aren't at great risk because they have predictable levels that don't change when residential comes in near them. But we still wanted to be proactive with quality of life and try to avoid those common conflicts. So what this does is when a hotel or a new development with a residential component is being constructed near an existing bar, club, or venue, they have to do a sound assessment before they finish designing and building their project. And like in San Francisco, now Austin has this with a focus on, did you know these venues were over here? You've got to do some sound testing so you understand what the sound levels are. And you can build that into your design and construction. Don't come back later and say you didn't know it was there. This is just some extra sort of steps to make sure they both know what bars, clubs, and venues are there. They know what their legal compliant levels are, and they know they need to account for it when they build their project.
That's really great. Maybe just briefly on the density bonus, and then I do want to keep it moving, but I'm sure we're going to come back to many of these concepts in our group discussion.
So the density bonus is a new policy that just got adopted. I think it was in October. And as we talk about the risk of displacement, obviously we want to preserve bars and clubs and venues in place where we can, but if they have to move, make it possible for them to have a path to start up in another location without huge barriers around zoning and conditional use permits. And this is an extra incentive that if a cultural district, it creates the opportunity to create a cultural district. And within that district, a new project can get extra entitlements for height and they can build more if they put a creative space on the ground floor and they do it at an affordable rate that's 50% of market rate. So it's an incentive to get creative spaces into new development.
That's amazing. That's great. Okay, more to come from Austin. Thank you, Brian. Going to turn from Austin to Boston. And Corean, welcome. This year, Boston launched a grant program, Wake Up the Night, to revitalize the city's nighttime economy. Can you talk a little bit more about, the origins of this program and some of the activities that it supported?
Definitely. Thank you for allowing me to share this with colleagues and the space beyond. But so Boston has a reputation. Its reputation isn't necessarily associated with fun. And it's partly because of the way that we have not uplifted the good stock that we have and the cultural institutions that we have, um, like Austin has done in other cities and New Orleans have done and other cities have done. And so um we built a culture where nighttime activity doesn't really exist. We had a mayor that said nothing good happens after 10 p.m. And so when I came into the role, there's a lot of culture shifting and that needed to be done as a whole, as a city as a whole. And so what I heard from folks is nightlife doesn't belong in this neighborhood. Nightlife is just bars, restaurants, and nightclubs, which is just not the case. And because Boston is a city that's made up of 23 unique neighborhoods, I knew coming in and saying, this is what Boston's nightlife looks like, and telling those 23 unique neighborhoods, and that's the end all be all, it wouldn't have flown because each neighborhood has its own identity, has its own infrastructure. And so what this particular grant program allowed for is for folks to reimagine their neighborhoods, their cultural spaces, their restaurants, their main streets into what they think their neighborhood should look like, what it and how it should be activated in the nighttime. And then there were also some categories that we wanted to focus on because we heard from folks throughout the city saying, hey, there's not enough accessibility programming when it comes to nightlife. There's not enough cultural expression or showcasing all of the cultures of Boston. What about intergenerational or youth nightlife activations? And then we wanted to look at our downtown area and how we could revitalize our downtown post pandemic so that folks wanted to stay downtown, come into downtown post their 9 to 5 work day. And so that's kind of the genesis of where the Wake Up the Night grants came from. And we were super successful in um, using ARPA dollars to invest in 42 organizations that helped us do over 50 events in 13 different neighborhoods throughout the city. And we invested $300,000, a little bit more than that. And we got some great ideas from young women in rock series, where it's a lot of it was all rock bands led by women. And then we turned City Hall into a nighttime cafe where each night we had a DJ and some type of activation, whether it was drag queens or it was a slumber party at at City Hall, to baby and me creation classes where families and intergenerational folks can come together and create together in the evening time. So we were really excited about allowing that, just to showcase Boston and nightlife as something beyond bars, restaurants, and nightclubs.
Thank you for sharing that. I often sometimes, or no, sometimes or often, worry that when people hear nightlife, they think, oh, well, that's something that somebody else, sure, I like doing my activity at night, but nightlife is something else. And I know that some folks talk about night culture or life at night, different ways. I mean, we talk about the nighttime economy as well, and that idea of getting beyond a narrow kind of conception of what nightlife means. So that's great. In terms of program design, I mean, it really was intentional in the design of the grant program to help source some of these great ideas, right? Like I know there were, you were seeking proposals that were around alcohol-free activities as one example of a category. And just could you talk a little bit more about, really the role that program design plays in getting, I often think that a big open call is great because it's free. People can say whatever they can offer whatever they want, but at the same time, without enough direction, you might not get the sort of projects that you really want. So how did program design play into the outcomes that you saw?
Yeah, and yes, it was an open call, but we had these 6 categories, and these 6 categories represented what we heard from community saying was missing as a part of nightlife. So spirit-free programming, that's a new trend, but there's not a lot of space that doesn't center around alcohol at night. Weekday activations, actively trying to get folks out and about between Monday and Thursday. Youth programming, we've had some issues with youth and where they go after school if they're not in an after school program, and how can they come together and have joy. Back in the day, you go to the local mall and you walk around with your friends and you scope out, right? But that we don't have that anymore. And then now arcades are centered around alcohol too, so they don't have an arcade to go to. So we asked community, hey, these are these challenges. These are these buckets. How should we solve for some of the issues and the gaps that we see in nightlife? And so this was done with ARPA money. So that means it's done, right? ARPA is done at the end of the year. And so we knew it wasn't permanent. So what are we learning from this? That's what we had to say, because I may not have the funds to do a program like this in the future. There are a few things that we learned from this. We learned about what neighborhoods want as far as nightlife is concerned, whether it's more family friendly or is it spirit free? Is it more DJ driven? So we got a better understanding of in each neighborhood what community wanted. We understood the permitting process and the application process a lot better. So when you're trying to do a night event, what are the barriers? How can we work through those barriers? How can my office and the permitting and the special event office and an external collaborator, how can we work together to have a successful event? Is it too expensive to do a successful event? Are there not enough venues? So we're learning from these interactions, these 42 different interactions, so that we can have stronger community building when it comes to nightlife, but also stronger interactions with the city, its processes, and how we can foster fun, third space, community building in the evening time in a more efficient, a user-friendly way. And so we were really excited to learn a lot about how we do business with others, but then also how people want to do business with us. And I will do a shameless plug. We had the first ever, they're saying in the nation, non-alcoholic beer garden, like Oktoberfest event in Boston. I'll take that claim to fame until somebody proves me wrong. And so these are the great ideas that are coming out of a small grant program. And it's a program that folks can do in the suburbs, right? It's not just a big city program. If we invest in community and their ideas, they can tell us what they want to see, and we can integrate that and as we build our nighttime agendas.
I love it. Thinking about hearing from community about what nighttime is, what's missing, what nighttime could mean to them, and then through the process, learning lessons about how the city can be more responsive moving forward. Just wonderful. More to come. Let's turn to Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
So Julia, one of the trends in nighttime management work across the country this year and has been around harm reduction as an area of increasing focus through a nighttime economy lens. And I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the efforts in New Orleans that are broadly within the harm reduction scope, things like Narcan, drink test strips, stop the bleed, maybe other efforts that I haven't captured. But just could you talk a little bit about what New Orleans has been doing from a harm reduction standpoint?
Yeah, definitely. One of kind of the pillars of our office's programming has always been about harm reduction, and beyond that, how do we empower our hospitality workforce to have the tools and the skills needed to ultimately save lives. So kind of in that category, Ben, like you mentioned, it's Narcan, Stop the Bleed. We've recently allocated some of our budget towards purchasing drink test strips that test for roofing, things like that. We're also potentially going to add some CPR training into our programming as well. One of the things that New Orleans is known for is our large events. We have Mardi Gras, we have parades all year long. We have all these crazy things. Next year specifically, we have the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras only a few weeks apart. And for those of you that are familiar with parade season, we have parades every single weekend leading up to Mardi Gras throughout the beginning of the year. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people in dense spaces. There's a lot of people in nightlife establishments like bars, nightclubs on Bourbon Street and the French Quarter. When people are in dense spaces, bad things can happen quickly. And sometimes, EMS has a hard time responding as quickly as they need to in order to intervene, save a life, things like that. So we have focused on partnering with other city departments and offices. Like the health department has been a really huge ally for us, and they have a lot more bandwidth and they have a lot more budget than we do, but they have kind of worked with us in the capacity of us making the introductions to these nightlife establishments that we have relationships with, so that we can bring these harm reduction classes to the bars, to the French Quarter, to the Garden District, to Uptown, to around the university, things like that. Narcan training has been really impactful. We do have a Narcan behind every bar program. So the city purchases Narcan and we will give it to you if you're a bar that wants to keep it in stock. Everyone does. One of the things that I worked on in the past couple months is just, okay, so the bars have Narcan, but people don't necessarily know that there's Narcan available. So just kind of, I've been creating signage and messaging so that if someone is, overdosing outside the bar, because that's honestly where it happens a lot more than inside the establishment. If something bad is happening outside, I created a little sticker decal that we can put on the bar window that says we carry Narcan, and it's the signature Narcan pink color. So people know to look to this nightlife venue as a resource. So happy about that one. And I think, the feedback that we've gotten is all positive, and it's all just, the hospitality workers saying, thank you. We're on the front lines every day. And a lot of the time, we see something bad happen and we can't intervene. And we just want to give them the tools to intervene.
That's great. You've touched on it, I think maybe more than a little bit, but just to reinforce in the broader context of this work, how really, and I think you've already touched on it a bunch, but harm reduction and supporting the nighttime workforce and nighttime and nighttime patrons as well. How does that fit into the overall strategy, and kind of how do you see these strategies moving forward, all of the good work to support the nighttime economy?
Yeah, I mean, one of the concerns that I think everyone on this call, speakers and non-speakers can, agree with is that a lot of cities feel unsafe at night for various reasons, New Orleans being one of them. So harm reduction is a huge part of our office's strategy to kind of show people that it's not as dangerous as it might seem. I mean, yes, bad things do happen. Bad things happen everywhere, but, we're making it safer in ways that we can. So, beyond just helping the workers, we're doing this and we're putting messaging out there to get people to try to come back out into the various, entertainment districts in our city. We've also been working with the universities. We have 5 universities in New Orleans, mainly Tulane and Loyola, have been in a conversation with myself and some others about just how can we work specifically with the students to keep the students safe. Because, a lot of them are 18 years old, moving to New Orleans. There's a lot of temptation and a lot of trouble to get into. So how can we A, keep them safer, but B, make sure that, parents are knowing that there are resources available here for them, and that, someone has their back when they're sending their child to a city, knowing that they're going to be out there interacting with very adult nightlife.
Absolutely. final question to touch on before we head to group discussion. New Orleans recently completed a music census as well, and I've seen some in fact, when was the most recent announcement? Yesterday, today, about
This morning.
morning. Very good. So it's a work underway to implement. Could you talk at a very high level about what the key takeaways from the music census project and how that's informing the work of the office?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible, but I could talk about this for like 5 hours straight. But so we conducted the New Orleans Music Census earlier this year. The results were released over the summer. This morning, what Ben's referring to is we just launched the Music Census Sessions, which is a professional development program where we're going to be hosting a year of programming around workshops, business skills to help local creatives put the business in music business. That's kind of our tagline. I'm really excited to offer that. And that came, directly from the census. One of the main challenges that was reported is just, a lack of access to these professional skills and resources. So this is one thing that I identified as, well, we can help fill in the gap there. And we're partnering with a local nonprofit called the Ella Project, to put that programming together to make sure that experts are speaking on the topics. And it's not just a bunch of, people who wear suits and sit in offices all day talking about things. Other things that we learned from the census, and I think it was Tina who said earlier on this call, these studies don't necessarily say too much that we don't already know, but they give us the data to back it up when we're having conversations. So we got a lot of that out of this census. Sound has been a topic on this call, so I'll bring up one of those programs. So we got a lot of responses about venues having struggles with, residential interactions, things like that. Our office knows that's already a challenge, an obstacle for many businesses because we have a mediation program, but this was a way we see this new grant program that we've created as a way to kind of put those together and address it. So it hasn't been announced yet, but the program is going to be providing funding to local music venues to have a consultant come out and kind of look at the space and see, what's going on, recommend some capital improvements that can be implemented to kind of mitigate sound leakage, things like that. And the second part of the grant program is going to be, I'm pretty sure, a dollar for dollar match to actually do those capital improvements. So that's things like, insulation, if it's an outdoor space, building a fence, putting the subwoofers under the stage, things like that, that can be really costly, but once they're implemented, make things a lot better for the venue and for the residents.
That's great.
Also,
Oh yeah,
sorry.
No, go for it. No.
Well, I mean, you can cut me off. I could keep talking, like I said. So yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to highlight that I think that idea of getting the technical assistance along with the soundproofing funding that it's not uncommon. I'm sure we've all seen an operator who really is trying to do their best and thinks they know how to fix the sound issues, but they don't. And if you spend money the wrong way, that's no good for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, we have one venue right now that I'm thinking of where exactly that happened. They were having problems. They got some really bad advice and they spent a bunch of money and it made the situation a lot worse. So, yeah, we're trying to work with folks who are trying to do the right thing, which most people are. We talk about good actors versus bad actors. You're going to know the bad actors, but most of them are trying to do the right thing. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for sharing these stories. It's really inspiring to hear about successes and also to hear, that they don't just magically come from anywhere. They come from hard work. Sometimes they take years of work to put into it, but I think there are a lot of good lessons in the stories that you've all shared. I want to throw a couple questions open to the group now, and if folks want to additionally submit questions, please feel free to do that in the chat. If I was going to say if you could wave a magic wand, but put the magic wand aside. What's one thing that would make it easier to do your work and your office's work to support the nighttime economy? What's one thing that you wish you had more of, or wish you had that or maybe that you would like to be working toward developing? Anybody have a reaction to that?
My first reaction to that, and I think a lot of us can agree, is just like resource. But there's a saying that one of my colleagues tells me to kind of ground me when I'm just like panicking and I'm like, all of these issues and I've got a lot on my plate. And he said, think of it like this. There's 1,800 people working on Boston during the day, and there's only one working on Boston at night, and that's you. So there's a disconnect definitely there. And just having folks understand the importance of a 24-hour economy and the nuance that it takes to support the different industries at night to ensure that our 24-hour economy is strong with a strong nighttime economy. That if we could just
I
wave
can
that wand, it would
second
make my
that.
job a lot easier.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges that comes up is it's an economy. And I think a lot of times when people think about nightlife and things happening, they think it's something that you enforce or you manage or you do something with, and they don't see it as an asset and an attribute to how it helps your city. And how having a really strong social and nighttime economy, businesses want to come here. People want to live here. People want to come and bring their events here because it's some place where people want to be. And I think that sometimes that's the hardest pivot is when you get your government or your executive management to understand the importance of what it does, then you get those resources. And so I think that a lot of people think about what happens during the day. And I think Corean hit it on the head too about the different nuances, because the things you do to manage mobility or, policing even, it's different in the nighttime. It's a whole different, it's like the other 9 to 5. And it's not people understanding that things that happen in the social and nighttime space need different approaches than things that you do during the daytime. And also, I love what Julia talked about too, is that supporting these businesses that they're successful. A lot of times we'll see big focuses on how do we support the IT industry or how do we support this retail industry, but you don't see that same effort in terms of how do we give people the resources to understand how to successfully manage and navigate what they need in the social hospitality spaces. And so it'd be really nice to have those resources that go to help those businesses because they are unique and need a different set of skills than say, what does it take for you because you're an IT startup? That's a whole different set of skills, and you get that kind of support from the commercial space, from the resources to navigating things that you don't get for the nighttime and social economy.
I'm gonna, jump on that train too. I think it's the biggest challenge that we have day in and day out is just communicating to other city agencies, even, other people in the community that nighttime economy is economy. I think that, the term night mayor is out there, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but I always, cringe when I hear that term because that's not what it is, like it's just Corean up there in Boston, and she's not the one who's calling all the shots. And there isn't, a whole new set of policies that take place at night versus during the day. It's not like she meets up with the actual mayor and grabs the key and then hands it off in the morning. So just finding a way to communicate those differences. And also because, all of our offices are relatively small from, one person up to, I don't know, I think New York has 12 people, 10, 12 people in their office, but that's pretty small. So a lot of what we focus on relies on support from other departments. And if they don't understand what it is we're talking about or why we're saying the need is there, then it's just not going to get done. Like parking enforcement in New Orleans is one of those conversations we have where, you ask the question, well, why does parking enforcement really basically end at a certain hour? And it's like, oh, well, that's when the shifts end. I'm like, okay, but that's, anyway, I could go on about that. But yeah, so just being able to communicate that, so much activity, economic and otherwise, takes place after dark. I would really love to be able to just program that into people's brains.
And I think I can kind of put a nice bow on this. Kind of everything you all just said, the importance of the work, highlighting the importance of the work in the nighttime economy. But for me, it's if I could wave that magic wand in every city, regardless of where they are on the continuum, further prioritizing and elevating the platform for nighttime management inside city government, and then having something outside city government that's a nighttime economy commission or advisory board or stakeholder group. We all have parts of that. We're all in different places on the continuum. But if I could wave my magic wand, it would be elevating it further in every city, and for sure in our city as well. So we can do this work, and so we can make an impact in our role.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks everyone. I think, oh, Corinne.
It's also an equity issue if we think about it. A lot of folks who work in the nighttime industry, they don't the salaries don't match up to the salaries from a traditional 9 to 5. And so if we are not investing in our nighttime industries and our nighttime workforce, what does that say about the equity and how equitable your systems are for your city? You know, we have public transportation that works well for our 9 to 5 folks, but from our folks who work in kitchens and who are in hospitality and even in labs creating the new cure to whatever, they don't have access to transportation here in the city of Boston, and that becomes an equity issue because of the demographic, because of the neighborhoods that these people are coming from and their background. So I also want to make that a point as well.
Or even things like childcare. I mean, that's a whole
Childcare,
other
yep.
issue too. I mean, if you think especially a lot of women are in the space, or other kind of caretakers, there's not that access to childcare. So there's a lot of things that, when you're working daytime, you take for granted. I mean, even if someone takes public transit to work, how do they get home is a really
Right.
big issue for a lot of people that work in this space. And so it's those kind of things that are issues and problems that need.
I mean, I think that so many roles in nightlife are seen as a secondary job or a stepping stone job. And that's just simply not true for so many reasons. This is someone's career. You know, we have servers in New Orleans, waiters who have been in that position for 30 years, and that's their career. We have entrepreneurs that are, they're a bar manager now, but in the background, they're working on opening their new space. So just kind of looking at it with the priority that it deserves is really critical.
We actually just got in a question that speaks to this very topic about, has anyone thought about or tackled the need to extend city services past 5 p.m. and I guess in any of your cities, have you experienced that friction of people not having access to city services or thought about exploring adding city services beyond in the nighttime arena?
Sacramento, we've expanded some, but it's still hard. We actually have, for example, the uniqueness of a code compliance division that works in the evening to try to help manage some things, but we can't have them work 7 days a week because we just don't have the resources. And I think entertainment isn't just on the weekend anymore. Our parking services does work late into the night. So our parking services does work at night, but it's just hard to get parking officers. But again, there's other services that we don't have. So again, I think the transit is a really big one that we just lack and don't have. And I think that's probably the biggest issue for us, is having that capability to support them. And even just probably operating services that people do for permitting and different things at different hours, because so much of it is like 8 to 5. And so those are other things that we don't offer late too. So it's a challenge. So we have some limited, but not a lot.
And I would say, yes, we should be trying to add services, but we're never going to be able to add all of those services. And I mean, that's the importance of this role, of the nighttime management role, to understand what's happening at night, to be able to translate that to folks who are working during the day, to be an advocate, to be a liaison, to be the people that understand and see what's happening. So yes, and yes is my answer, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even the services that we do have, it's not enough. I was just talking to a bunch of venue owners, and they're saying we need more police presence. We can't control the crowds, especially when there's 4, 5, 6 different venues on one street that are letting out at the same time. And so how do already strapped police department add more capacity to those types of areas, and those are hard challenges to wrestle with and to find resources for when there's already a lack thereof for resources during the day. And so that we kind of get what we can get to solve those issues, but it's never enough. And transportation is another one of those things where we don't have nighttime transportation. We just don't have it in the city of Boston. And so, and our transportation is a regional transit system. So because Boston is a part of their service area, but it's not their only one. And because of that, we have to think through what are the solutions so that we can support our nighttime workforce with transportation.
I wanna quickly, since we're approaching the end of the session. So transportation, childcare, we've talked about a number of issues in this last 10 minutes or so that weren't covered in each person's sharing of big wins. Are there any other big topics, especially forward looking for 2025, the big topics that you're looking to tackle or would like to tackle, or curious about how others are tackling and trying to get a better sense of best practices? Like what's something maybe that we haven't covered quite so much in this conversation that's on your agenda or you're looking toward?
I mean, so I mentioned, obviously in New Orleans, we have Mardi Gras parades around that, and we have the Super Bowl coming up. So I'm a little bit biased in what I'm about to say, but I would love to, spend some time focusing on what the nighttime economy of a city can focus on around large special events that are bringing in, a very large number of people. So, strategies around things like getting people to spend time and money outside of just downtown. How can we get them to go over to all of the other parts of our cities that also have something going on? What are some ways that we can make sure that we are maximizing the economic impact of, our pre-existing brick and mortar businesses, when, certain types of events might have, food trucks and other folks coming in from out of town who don't live there year round, but they're coming in and they're taking some of that profit that I think should be really going towards the people who are already invested in our city every day. So just kind of a general conversation more about strategies around large special events.
Well, and especially how other businesses can benefit from them. Aftershock is a really big, huge event for us over the 3 days. Over 100,000 people come to Sacramento to listen to these, musicians, but it doesn't always translate to the other bars and restaurants getting that kind of business. So people go to Aftershock, woo, have a good time, but they're not necessarily always going to our other bars and nightlifes and actually additionally listening to music. So sometimes it's kind of a pull and, push and pull, because we want to draw that attention, but is it helping all of our businesses? I mean, it definitely helps our hotels, but our other businesses struggle, and sometimes there's some resentment. So you're right about, we have those large events. It's really trying to make sure that you maximize everybody being able to benefit. And again, trying to get them from sometimes out of the core. The way our city is broken up is we have two rivers, and where Aftershock is, it's south of a river, but there's a lot of things that are going on north of that river, but people tend to go south, even though north of the river is closer. So it's trying to get people to go like cross the bridge, go over to the other side, but it's trying to get people to see that. And so it's hard to communicate that, because that's when you build that resentment. So you're right, when those large events come in, how does it benefit everyone, not just the people in the immediate area?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we had Taylor Swift for 3 nights in October, and it was right before Halloween. And, great, yay, economic impact for the city. But then I went around and I talked to the venues the day after Halloween, and they were all just like totally deflated because their shows were so poorly attended. And this was, a night of the year that they really bank on making a lot of money, and they didn't because Taylor came to town. It's no one's fault, but it's just how can we give some of that back to them and make sure that they're not being hurt?
Yeah, and collaboration and partnership is key, and being intentional about that is key to that as well. Like working with your convention centers and creating more curated lists to suggest to folks who are using that space, to suggest to their participants to go and venture out in the city, working with the with the hotels, working with your tourism agency to ensure that they're knowledgeable about what's beyond the city center. We have a learned lesson here in Boston where we had NAACP convention come into the city. They were in Seaport, which is not a very diverse neighborhood, but we have all these Black folks coming into the city of Boston, but the Black restaurants weren't seeing the uptick and the benefits of that because they're not located in that neighborhood. They're a few neighborhoods away. And so we actually saw one restaurant go down in sales that week rather than go up because of their proximity to and their accessibility to the convention center. And so, but if we were more intentional and got transportation to get folks to over there or did some programming over there, that's where we could have benefited our small businesses and benefited these visitors and seeing all of Boston's community.
That's really, that's great. And this is a great this conversation, and I think, you know, hearing from other folks outside of this session about this interest in large, I do think that this is an area that of interest to a lot of cities that are investing in and looking at how to support their nighttime economies. We have a couple more minutes left and a couple of related questions, one of which is around what is and how important is interaction with state agencies, especially around liquor licensing, and then a separate question around trends in open container ordinances, which I know, Tina, you had talked about early in this session, which we call them, maybe it's the terminology is a little bit vague, but we call them entertainment zones in California, but they are functionally open container zones, and again, from restaurants and bars. Restaurants and bars could sell open containers to go for consumption
I mean, I think it's been really good. And Ben, shout out to you because you've been so active and engaged at our state level with working with legislators to change our ABC, like, liquor licensing laws, because it's not only like the entertainment zones, which really helps our bar and restaurants be more participative in these events that happen right outside their doors, but they can't participate because they can't sell the alcohol and have to be able to take it out. That was a really huge game changer. And then being able to watch how you implement it in San Francisco has been great. And then another one was just a huge change in our law related to live music venues that was recent, because it used to be if you're a live music venue here in California, you had to sell food. And so you couldn't just be like a live music venue that just sold liquor. If you wanted to be all ages, you had to sell food if you wanted to have that kind of thing. And so again, working with the state to change that so we could have a live music license type was huge. So having that relationship with your state, if they control your liquor licenses, is really important, because so much of that is centered around our businesses. So being able to have that really good discussion and being able to change laws that are somewhat archaic and really based on this one thought process about how things work. So it's really critical to being able to open up opportunities for venues to be able to do different things and be creative.
And a shout out to Julia as well and the NIVA California team for all of their advocacy for the state music venue licenses. We are about at time. Anybody have any final thoughts on this alcohol licensing or state agency collaboration topic that they want to offer? Or this has been just a great discussion.
Hey,
Well,
I
Boston
guess
just got 260 new liquor licenses, and that was with collaboration with the state. And now the city has to dole all those out. So we've got
I
a
don't
path.
think we can leave this topic without talking about the Texas alcohol tax rebate to live music and performance venues. Definitely incredible program that we hope to see other states do as well.
And that was there's been legislation subsequently in Tennessee, and I believe maybe a bill in Ohio as well, and certainly a lot of folks interested in following in Texas's great footsteps there. We are past time, but I just want to thank all of our panelists. This has been a great session, and as you can tell, there's more to dive into in all of these issues. Really appreciate all of the contributions, and we will be following up, I think, with some written content around these trends as well. Please do become a member of NITECAP, night-cap.org, and make sure you are subscribed to our newsletter to stay tuned on all of this. But thank you so much, everybody. Tina, Corean, Brian, Julia, really appreciate all of your time. And thank you, everybody who attended. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
So much. Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
all.